All right, ready to go. Okay, so give me the whole screen because there's our normal sort of introductory PowerPoint that Joe and I began to use when he first came to Australia pre-COVID. Seems so long ago. But in reality, we did a lot of field work out here. And I was asked yesterday by a group at Jurassic Ark, when you're coming again, Joe? So I said, we'd love to have him, but you'd better fork out the money for the for the for the airfares. But anyway, in between time, I've still been doing some field trips. Here's Australia. This is a couple of weeks ago when my wife and I just took 5 days off and we went to visit some friends, one of the ladies who used to work for us. And this is sort of an hour and a half drive from their house. As you can see, the world is overcrowded. We are in Australia near the town of 1770. Now, 1770 is a little settlement basically named after Captain Cook's arrival on the coast there. Beautiful coastline, rugged coastline. My friend is the only person I met all along this section. You can see the bush tracks are not actually tourist quality. It's just a walking track, and you soon run into lots of rocks. Now, why are we there? We're there because 30 years ago, I led a field trip along here. Just a couple of us then, just a couple of us now, because it's too rugged for most people to come. The first sort of rock you run into is not only got layers in, it's got bits and pieces of rocks with layers in. And these are largely volcanic rocks. Now, I knew what to expect because I'd been here before, but if you've never had to walk over volcanic rocks, many of these are jagged and they'll tear your, if you just got ordinary tennis shoes on or whatever, they'll tear them to pieces. But you can see the big lumps. This has been blasted and then resealed together as the hot ash in between has re-welded everything. And then on the beach, between these rocks, you've had the volcanic rocks have eroded out, then they've re-cemented together for a third time. You see, there's some of the big rocks, and can you see right in the middle of the picture, there's what looks like a dark line? Now, this is a modern rock that's forming. We call them beach rocks. And if you want to know what the angle of the beach is doing, it tells you a little bit about the history. You can see where it looks like there's been a chop along here. Well, a big rock has been eroded out of that, but the little rocks side by side have fallen down in the sand and been re-cemented together. So we've had layers, we've had volcanic rocks, we've had beach rock forming in the present tense. Now, people find it hard to believe that you can actually make rock, and it can make rock on beaches present tense. It doesn't take time. It takes the presence of a good cement to glue the rocks together. Again, notice the overcrowding. But the one thing that had happened since I was up here 30 years, well, two things that happened since I was up here 30 years ago, but the first of it meant that we had to do this the hard way. Because given the bushfire season, given all the concern that people are having in our drought, we could not get in the original way, which made it fairly easy 30 years ago. So we had to do it the tough way. So we get up to this gap, and on the other side, there's a lot of erosion. So it's back and round. Oh, look at the crowds. Just amazing. There's about as many people here as there was when Captain Cook sailed past in 1770. And the trouble is, the second thing I found is I'm 30 years older, and we had to climb the cliffs, fingertip holes, tiny little boot holes. Yep, it was climbable 30 years ago. And 30 years later, I'm learning that age does not actually improve your mountain climbing skills. We had to ascend over here. You can see the rocks have all been weathered. They've fallen down. This is all volcanic rock here along the front. So we've got a Graham Creek volcanics. It's named like sedimentary layers from where it was first observed. And see some of the people have finally showed up on the scene right down there. That's how high we had to climb up. And I'll tell you what, my legs were beginning to tell me that I had gained 30 years in time and space. And there's the top of the cliff, and there's the beach we have to get to. If only the fireys had left the tracks open, we could have done this a whole lot easier, but still a tough climb. Um, you see, that was steep, going down and going up. Why were we there? Because 30 years ago, I found these. Um, can you see the fossil tree? Can you see the tiny fossils? Can you notice that the pieces may be broken, but along the edges, they're fairly straight? There's all sorts of trees and ferns in here. And the reason I wanted to take my friend there was that he wasn't a geologist. He'd sort of been to Jurassic Ark and he loved the fossils, but he didn't know there were any around where he lived. Well, in Australia, where he lived, I see we're an hour and a half's drive from where he lived. But that's local to us Aussies because it's such a big place. See the main stem? See the stems coming off the side? There's all sorts of plants here, big ones, little ones. Again, you can notice that everything seems to be, well, let's take you a bit close up. There's gazillions of fossils. I'll be honest, my friend, after an hour and a half really of driving, followed by 2.5 hours of climbing over cliffs and down mountainsides, was beginning to say, there's no fossils here. And then we could stop and point them out to him. Now, can you see there's an overall pattern to the fossils? They're sort of pointing from the top of the screen to the bottom in a rough wash. I mean, like when you see stems washing down a stream in a flood, there's a general overall pattern, even though they may be crunched up and bumping into one another. And I'm sitting back here by the edge of this cliff that we had to climb down. No tourist stairways. We'd climbed over that cliff behind and then down on the cliff on the left-hand side. And now we're down on the beach, which is, as you can see, undercrowded. So come to Australia. We need your tourist dollars to help us support the place. But look, some of the trees are polystrate. And I noticed there's a few questions about polystrate trees coming up on the Q&A. That's one that's standing vertically. There's one that's standing at a 45-degree angle. Then the question that came up was, do these have tree rings? Well, we can answer that in a moment, but you keep your eyes open. And there's my friend's tennis shoes. He was almost regretting he'd worn tennis shoes. They've got good rubber holes on, but I tell you what, the volcanic ash, the volcanic lava, the volcanic sharpness begins to tear these to pieces. Single-use tennis shoes almost. Do you spot the edge of the logs here, by the way? Notice that though they're broken off from either end, the edge of the logs is actually nice and straight. Look at this size one. See on my right-hand side where I'm leaning on the rock? Or I'm pointing the angle at, my left hand there. That I'm pointing north to show you that these trees are actually lying almost just under east and just north of west. Take you closer. Here's a tree that's been squashed. Here's a tree that's got sand inside it, but it's squashed. Here's a tree that in its life would have been a hollow giant reed type tree. Now, we don't have those at Jurassic Ark. We have a couple of mysterious trees, but all of these trees here are in actually good shape, except where they've been broken off. This tree has got bark on it, and then there's an inside pattern, and then there's a sandy bed underneath it. So for those of you who are asking questions about polystrate trees, this is not a polystrate tree, but neither does it have any tree rings because it's a hollow type tree. Well, all good things come to an end. We'd reached sort of 2 p.m. in the afternoon, so we had to begin to head back because we had to build in the time it took us to get there and to get back out. Tell you what a walk, what good exercise. Well, we are abundantly prepared in creation research for one simple reason. we don't just read books by creationists. We don't just sort of buy fossils for our museums. We actually go and collect these things. The reason I've been really interested in this deposit, even though it's 30 years since I've been there, one of my old university tutors actually wrote the book on this whole region of the volcanics and things like that. And even he noticed some of the fossils and how well preserved they were. And his guess was that they were an extension of the Jurassic beds that we have at Jurassic Ark. Now, we are driving time, we are basically 5 hours from Jurassic Ark. So if he's right, then we have a huge area of fossil trees. But I've mentioned that before. The fossil tree beds in Australia cover, well, the exposed area of them in Queensland alone is basically 170,000 square kilometres. Unbelievable. Yeah, you heard me right. England is a puny little place. And if you took America and the United States, Australia actually fits over the United States. So it's about the same size. And if you're listening to the sizes, then we have incredible volumes of the material that we have at Jurassic Ark for just checking. Trees that are ripped up, trees that are not worn on the sides, they may be broken at either end, trees that are vertical. And well, you can still ask a question about rings. We'll come back to that one. But those of you who are Aussies, who are taking advantage of our daylight saving in Tasmania, where it's already 8 o'clock, or you're watching here in Queensland, where it's 7 o'clock. If you want to pay for the cost of new tennis shoes or climbing boots or wear and tear on human bodies, or the cost of running our museums and all of this, then there are ways you can do that. And I'm not apologizing for asking. We do need your support. So use the simple ways like Bank Pay ID or go to our main web and look it up.